Go. Well, hello everyone. Welcome back to Tattoos and Toddlers. And I've got a really special guest for you today. And I just gotta say, season two, like I've been telling y'all, season two is getting funner and funner because I'm getting bolder and bolder about just asking people to be on my podcast. So today we have Terrica, the one and only. Terrica, please introduce yourself
Oh,
briefly. Tell us all
oh.
about you.
Well, I'm Terrica. I own a wedding planning and design firm in coastal Georgia. I am also an industry educator, speaker. I like to call myself a hope dealer as well. I've got hope fiends instead of dope fiends. I feel like we could all use that little boost sometimes, especially whether it's in parenthood, it's in entrepreneurship, whatever it is. So I really aspire to be that amongst some of the other things that I've been called.
I love that though, because I had just read that in your email, signature. And I was like, oh, I should have put that on the graphic, for this podcast. I'll probably add that on there because I was like, I'm the same way. I'm such an encourager. That is where
Mhm.
I feel like my strengths, God gave me that from the beginning. I feel like it's one of those artistic things, creative things, and just connecting with other people to give them some encouragement. And so I love
Absolutely.
that we kind of have that in common. Like we're out here
Yes,
dealing hope.
that's right. That's right. Slinging hope. That's right.
Oh my gosh. So, and as you know, like a little bit of my podcast here is really discussions on how are we compartmentalizing parenthood and businesshood. And the first question I wanted to start with, because I don't know too much about you and the kids, is did you have a business before you even became a mom or a parent, or did it kind of just integrate into your life naturally?
No, there is nothing natural. The only thing natural about any of this was their childbirth. That's about it. I like to say that my kids grew up in my business because they did. I actually started my business right after I had my daughter. And at that time, I was doing legal studies at the University of Baltimore. So
Wow.
I was schlepping an infant carrier to the law library, reading briefs, and had her sitting right there on the table and doing so many things. And I
Wow.
finally got to a point where I was like, I don't think this is for me. I don't think this is really what I want to do. And I decided to go on a whim and say I'm going to become a wedding planner. And this is from somebody who's never had a wedding, never been to a wedding. And I'm like, yeah,
Okay,
I'm pretty sure.
I gotta ask,
Yeah.
how in the world did you find out about wedding planning then? How in the world did that
Okay,
come to
so
you?
I was married and we had eloped and I had been planning this wedding over and over again, but it never seemed to happen. Something
Right.
would always come up. So I was like, you know what? I really love this. And I was always an entertainer in the family. I
Yeah.
always like to host things. I always like to plan different things. And I'm like, you know what? As opposed to being a criminal attorney, which is what I wanted to do, I said I'd rather be involved in someone's life in a happier moment and moments and memories that they'll have that they'll cherish. So it felt like a very natural transition for me
Yeah.
to do what I loved. And I actually started my business in a completely new area. And that was a challenge too. So moving, being a young mom, being a young entrepreneur, trying to get your name out there, trying to get people to give you a chance, and you're new and you're trying to soak up everything that you can. I have no idea how I made it through those years. Now that I say it, I'm like, girl,
Isn't
what
that
were you
right? Like
on?
we
Like,
forget. We forget
yes,
everything.
get so much. It's kind of like being in college, right? And you think back to how hard you would party and
Yeah.
you're like, how am I still alive? Like
Huh?
that makes no sense. And that's how I feel now when I look at things. I'm like, wow, how did I do this? But I'm glad I did.
Oh my gosh, yeah, because I had just read, for those of y'all that don't know Terrica was just featured in Event Therapy magazine. So there's like a
Yeah.
full, I don't know how many pages of you that are in there, but I was reading some of that about how you were like, you were pregnant and had a toddler and you were picking up and moving somewhere. And I'm
Hmm.
taking that's up to the Georgia coast. Is
Yes,
that
to
when
the
that
Georgia
happened?
coast.
So you were
Yes, and I
pregnant, you had a little one, and we already know that's hard enough.
Mhm. And I was like, you know what? Hey, let's be a business owner on top of it in an industry you have no idea about because life isn't hard. You know what I mean? Let's shake it
No.
up a little bit. Yeah.
No, and I waited 12 plus years to have a kid because I really liked that no kids married thing for a long time.
Yeah.
But it's like, okay, so did you have people in your life that were kind of let you know in a way that you could even start a business? Like when I started a business, I didn't have any examples in my personal life of like none of my
Hmm.
family really like talked about that kind of stuff. I just kinda I wanna say stumbled into it in a way.
Hmm.
Did you have some examples of people in your life that already had businesses that you could, look up to, or were you just kinda like you just jumped right in like the rest of us
No,
have?
I jumped right in. And, for me, it was so much of, you know, because I was in school, it was like, you're expected to do this, you're expected to do that. And I come from a big law enforcement and military family. So it was even my plan to go into JAG, into the
Wow.
military as well. And then
Wow.
that didn't pan. Yeah, so
That would have
girl,
been a whole other thing. Wow.
insane. Woo! So it's so much. But it was more like people were like, "Oh, okay, that's what you're doing." And it's so funny that
Right?
my best friend from high school, she was there at the party in Atlanta, and she's like, I remember coming to your house and you had this huge binder of how you wanted your business laid out, the services you were going to offer. She was like, I wish that I had something from that moment. She was like, because this is it. And I had told my aunt many, many years ago, right when my daughter was born, I was like, yeah, I think I want to do this. And she was like, well, go do it. And now she's so proud of me because she knew the journey that I took and she knew what it took for me to get here. And she's my father's youngest sister.
Oh.
He's no longer with us. So to hear her say it and to hear her know, what he talked about and how excited he was, that really does mean a lot. So for me, it's always been about no, so nobody's done it, right? So what? Do it. And I did my life backwards. What most people would consider backwards. I got I got married at 19 and I had my children. And then and throughout the course of that I started a business, and at the time my husband was deployed a lot, and so I had to learn how to do a lot on my own. And
Yeah.
then when we moved, I was the only family that I had here. Like
Yeah.
sometimes when I would have weddings, my family would fly in for the weekend, but otherwise it was just it was hard, right? But life is like that, right? It's choose your hard. Everything is hard. Choose your hard. But I can remember one time getting food poisoning
Mhm.
and being all alone. And I had a toddler and I had a baby, and the baby was like this close to being out of formula. And I had to literally drag myself and this is before DoorDash was even a thing.
Oh yeah.
I had to drag myself to the car, get them in the car, drive and get that. And it's just like that resilience that we all have, that power that we all have, that we draw from, actually sustains us through so many more opportunities and challenges that we have in our businesses. And I think that that's really important for us to know. Sometimes we're like, oh my God, how am I going to make it through whatever it is? Tough clients, tough vendors, not getting called, not getting hired, business being slow. And you're just like, well, you know what? I made it through that. I can make it through this.
Oh my God. Like I feel you on that because I like to say that having my business actually trained me to be a parent, I feel like, because
Hmm.
it's all compartmentalization of your time and time
Hmm.
management, which when I got laid off from my job in like '08, I was like, what do I do with myself? I have to manage myself. This is terrible. But then I was like, wait, I get to do this. I get to do this.
Hmm.
I get to do these things I've always had inside of me all along. And then when my kid came along, it was like, well, you are now integrated into mommy's dreams, passions,
World.
and goals. And
Hmm.
then now I get to help her find her own kinds of things. And I think, and she's only 7, so I'm learning from this
Such a
lens.
fun age.
It really is, not gonna
Such a
lie.
fun age.
And
It's
she's
such a
so
fun
like,
age.
she's sometimes higher energy than me, which sometimes is exhausting, but at the same time, at the same time, I've never talked more in my life. I'm like, oh, how do you do
I can
it
remember
like
those days being like,
four? Like,
let's play who can be quiet the longest. Like, let's play that, please.
and I try to tell people,
I
I've
remember
mentioned this several times on my podcast, that when my daughter's in the room, my brain doesn't work and I can't
that.
really explain it. And eventually I will be able to, but she literally has taken a piece of my brain and a piece of my heart. And if she's in the
And
room,
just
I
walked
can't do
off.
anything else.
Walked off. Just walk. It's funny how when you're a parent, things change. And, having so many of my friends come in, friends that knew me personally, but it was really great to have industry friends hang out with us
Yeah.
over the weekend and with my kids. And they're like, I can see you in your kids. Like I can see like different parts of your personality in each of your kids, but they're like,
Yes.
I can also see how you kind of don't turn off a little bit. And I'm like, I don't. So it's like your head is always on swivel. You're always like, and I'm like counting in my head, but to make sure that's something I've always done since I've had them. Like, hey,
Oh
1,
my
2,
God.
3, 4. We can go. We can leave. I have all of my ducks. We can leave.
Oh
We
my
can
God.
do
We
this.
just had our first zoo outing yesterday. I was like, I need information. I need intel. Somebody report back to me.
I have to know the things. I have to know all the things. And my youngest is nonverbal and has autism, and so that kicks it up a notch even more.
Yeah.
You had to relearn had to learn how to parent differently. And they say your children all have different personalities, no matter how much they look alike, no matter how much they may seem to act alike, they all have different personalities. But this was a whole new gamut. And then I was thinking about this the other day. It was something new for my children too. They had to learn how to, be a sibling differently. And then now that they're older, they help me out when I travel. And they take on a lot of the leadership and they take on a lot of the care too. So
Awesome.
it's a never ending but very rewarding job.
Oh my God, yeah. Like, what do they taught? The thankless job.
Mhm.
Speaking of, we just had Mother's Day, right? So we just had Mother's Day, and I love that I've been married for, let's see, 19 years now, ish. Yeah, I think the math. I'm
One
mathing
of those.
now. So
I'm there. Yeah.
my husband runs out, buys me some flowers, but they weren't just any flowers. They were hot pink fake tulips. And I was like, you know what? These are awesome because they're never going to die and my cats aren't going to eat them. And, so what was your Mother's Day like?
I was in bed the entire
Oh,
day. I was just I didn't feel well, to be completely transparent. Did not feel well, did not feel like lifing at
mhm.
all. I had spent it was just an emotional and professional deluge of so many things. So my Mother's Day was just being in the bed. And it was great that I got to see my kids very briefly, but I was like, I need a break, right? I needed a break. And I think that that's very important for us to learn as parents. We have to push through so much, but sometimes mommy has to be in timeout. Because I don't want to take anything that I'm going through out on you. I don't want to show up less than what you need me for. So I have to take a break. And that's something that I hope that they really pick up on for themselves too, that it's okay to take a step back and take a breather so that you can come back and attack whatever it is that you have to deal with. Otherwise, we'll always be getting a watered down version or a less stronger
Or you're going to
version of
have to
you.
go in there and apologize for what you may have
Mhm.
said, or even the attitude and the way you
Yeah.
said it. And I've talked about this recently where I'm just owning up to, if I've said something that I feel might have upset her, or she's clearly crying because I said
Hmm.
something, I'm
Hmm.
going to go back in there when I've, had a moment,
For
and I'm going to go
sure.
back in there and talk to her like an adult and say, listen, mommy was not at her best.
Hmm.
Like
No,
she
I
was,
literally just had one of those moments, just had one of those. And I think that for me and my generation, it's so
yeah,
different because we weren't apologized to as children. It
yeah,
was, you just take it, it is what it is, and we
yeah.
may
You
stop
just deal
talking.
with
And
it.
whenever I start talking to you again, that's
Yeah.
me being over it. But I really try to respect my children and apologize to them for when I'm wrong, or for when I yell and I say things that may have hurt them, because I want them to understand that, I'm not at my best, but I love you and I'm still showing up, and I owe you an apology. I owe you enough. I love you enough, and I respect you enough as a person to recognize your feelings and to apologize to
I
you. And
think
I hope that
that
that's
is
something
so
that they grow
beautiful.
with too.
So beautiful, and I love it because that's real life right there. That's real life. If we're
Mm.
not dealing with adults, we're dealing with kids. Or both.
Somewhere along the line,
Adult
and
kids.
some, yeah, I was about to say some children in adult bodies. Yes, very much so,
So
very much
I
so.
did have one little question here.
Yeah.
And it kind of goes in line with what we're just now talking about. Like, what's one thing you may have learned from your kids recently, even? Like,
Mm,
because they're such great teachers, and I know it's vice
they
versa.
really
Sometimes
are.
we're there teaching them, but I also feel
Mm,
like, especially like I told you, I'm at age 7 right now, and she's just teaching me so much about how to view the world and her world versus my world and all the worlds colliding. Is there anything recently
yeah.
that you and the kids, you kind of learned or?
Well, um, not so much learned, but set an example.
Yeah.
And just at the party, for example, I am sitting, and again, now every this was probably the hardest thing I've ever had to do because I had to be on and I had to be mom.
Ooh,
Now, I just recently took my children to the Wedding Pro experience in Florida. These are my older children. So, yeah, I'm
yeah,
still on and I'm still mom, and I can still monitor them. But
yeah,
this one was different because I have my younger son with me, and he is like, he's an eloper, he runs off, he stins, he does all the things. And so now I have to be on, but I also have to be Terrica. So there's a panel discussion going on, and I can't really listen or really participate into it because I'm watching him. I'm making sure,
yes,
he's playing with the lights, he's thirsty, he's angry, he's whatever.
yeah.
And my he started getting really frustrated, and everything that we were doing was not appeasing him. And my older son came to me, he was like, Mom, I'll take him for a walk. I'll go walk with him. I'll go do something with him. And, my son was about to have a meltdown. He was right on the cusp of having a meltdown. And I am about to go on, with Teresa and talk about this feature and talk about this magazine.
Yeah.
And I think about the grace, and I think about the love that my son had for me in that moment to say, Mom, I'll take care of this so that you can do this, so that you can be you. And it ended up, my son really had a meltdown. He was like attacking his brother and everything in the car. And I didn't know that until afterwards. But again, it was just that example of, I'm going to take this off of your plate because I know you need me in this moment. And I may miss out on something, but it's important for me to show up for you here. So I think that was such a strong lesson for me to not only do that for them, but for other people in my life too. And I'm so grateful that I got to experience that. And then my children also teach me, just how to show up fearless. We sit
Mhm.
here and we talk about different ideas and being creative and all of these other things. And they're like, oh, you should do that. And I'll say, I can't do that. Like my other son, my middle son had the most amazing idea for a podcast
Uh-huh.
segment. And I'm like, Justin, I can't do that. He was like, Mom, you're Terrica. Yes, you can. And I'm like, no, I don't think I can.
Like,
And so, it's just like they're so fearless, they're so creative, they're so innovative. And I just I love that so much.
me too. Like in all rare honesty here. Like my kid takes after me creatively. She's already drawing images that are
Mm,
way beyond I can think. This girl can take a YouTube video and she can recreate it. I'm just like, wow. And then she's so funny because she looks at me when I draw, like I'm drawing little drawings here of things I'm designing right now. And she's like, Mommy, how do you do that? And I said, Well, I have been alive a little
oh.
bit longer than you.
Isn't it funny how they think that like your siblings or your friends and like you never existed before they showed up? I love that.
It's really, really funny. And I love seeing how she teaches me every day that, this really wild confidence that I didn't have as a kid. I grew up completely different than her. She's in a
Mhm.
different space, which I think is great. She's in this
Yeah.
generation of where she's going to be an only child and she's not going to have that sibling rivalry, but I throw her in as many group scenarios as possible to make sure she Because I was
As another only child, I appreciate that. I think that that's
yes.
great. She sounds like she's going to be just fine.
She's gonna
Just
be just
fine.
she teaches me so much about just that beautiful confidence that I should also continue to tap into. And because
Hmm.
she's just so cute. She's so magnetic with people and it's adorable and I just love it. And so she's
Oh,
such a great blend of engineer and artist and
I
it's
love
really
that.
funny.
I love that. Like,
Yes.
how do we make it work and then make it pretty, make it fashion? I love that.
Yes, this
I
girl's
love that.
already, she's already like, I'm so impressed on how she has a vision for something and she'll lay it out to me. And I said, well, spell it out for me, draw it out for me, and I'll help you go execute it. It's so cute. It's the most
It
adorable thing.
is.
And I think being
It
in the events
is.
industry, right? Like we start to see that repeated even just in our home life. Like we're gonna
Hmm.
delegate this, this, and this. We're gonna go manage this, this, and this. If you have an idea, let's listen to, let's have a family meeting, blah, blah, blah. So it's really kind of interesting how things have shifted even for me just being in this industry. And I say the industry, I've been a photographer for 17, but I haven't been a part of the industry until
Mm,
2020 and I decided to just
sure.
leap out and I've just learned so much in the last 3 years just about taking it all in, like
Yeah.
running a business, parenting, all the extra things that we are passionate about that we're finding time for, even though we feel like we're already out of
Hmm.
time.
Hmm.
But
Hmm.
it's like it's great. It's great. I love the adventure, and this is another part of the adventure for me. And so, but you also have I was going to say one of my questions was is you have your name Terrica that you're under with the umbrella of Terrica, but you also your business is like cocktails and details.
Cocktails and details. Yes, that's my wedding
So
planning company. Yeah.
yeah, so like I don't know about you, but like when I started some of my businesses, I just kind of let them be their own name, and then I've only
Hmm.
just now started embracing the pink hair Jen part of it. Because I always liked being disassociated with my business for some
Gotcha.
reason. For
Gotcha.
some reason. So when I thought about cocktails and details, versus Terrica, and we're making it all
Mhm.
work, all these brands, all these wonderful brands. But yeah, so are there anything or any things that, when you were starting your business, has your business always been that name, or have you had several different kind of
No, I've
regroupings and
had
renames?
several different names.
Same.
I've had several different names. One in part because I didn't know who I was or who I wanted to be
Mm-hmm.
somebody to.
Mm-hmm.
And I was attracting clients. I wasn't attracting my favorite clients. I wasn't attracting
Right.
my best clients. I wasn't attracting clients who appreciated or valued what I did. And then the final iteration of my name, this is a public story. Everyone knows I got into a huge trademark battle with my
Mm.
name and ended up just giving it up because my attorney came to me and said, look, we can fight this, but it's going to take a long time and it's going to be a lot of money. And is that something that you want to do? And at that time, my children were at the forefront of my mind because I was like, I don't want to teach them to give up. I don't want to
Yeah.
teach them. I want to teach them to fight for something. And this was taken from me, et cetera, et cetera. But then I also had to stop and I had to say, okay, there's also some power in letting go.
Mm.
And
Good.
when I did let go, the name Cocktails and Details was the name of the blog that I had, and the blog was already popular, so it was a very easy transition for me to make, where people would still associate that with me. Instantly trademark that, but I wouldn't go through that again. And I found the perfect designer at some point because even though I had the name and I was like, yep, that's what we're going for. This we're trademarking this. I still wasn't sure about how I wanted it to look.
Yeah.
And so I was going through different iterations of colors and imagery and fonts until I found this one designer and she just nailed it, completely nailed it. And I was like, I don't need to change anything else. And then now this comes along. I've been doing speaking and educating
Yeah.
and courses and everything else for the past 7 years. And it's like, all right, well, how do I find the brand with this? Like, this is even more personal than my
Tell me
wedding planning
about
company.
it.
This is literally me. How do I like what is this? What do I want it to be? And I had to learn so much about myself and how I wanted to show up there too. So it's a never ending thing, but it's also one of those things like it's where when you know,
I was
and when
gonna
you
say
got
that
it,
was
you
my
got it.
response earlier in my head. I said, well, if you know, you know, because that's
Mm-hmm.
really that's where I'm at too. It's like, oh, here's me, all of me now. No
Yep.
more
Yep.
hiding. No more
Mm-hmm.
hiding. I'm just like, release out into the world. We already know not everybody's our client, not everybody's supposed to like us. But I grew
Mm-hmm.
up so like I must fit in with everybody and I must have everybody like me. But that's just how I grew up. I grew up moving so much that I didn't have consistent friendships or relationships. So
Yeah.
I was like,
Yeah.
well, let's just, let me just not stand out. Let me just kind of like follow the crowd and just go my own way. And then, man, something shifted 3.5 years ago that was like, no, it's time to step into the things that
Time
you're.
to come out. Yep.
And I
Mm-hmm.
feel like that's kind of what you did too. Like you stepped into a new place that was waiting there for you. And it was just
Yeah.
like, all right, it's time.
Well, it's hilarious, Jen, because I owe so much to Sasha Souza. I had hired
Mm,
her as a business coach because I wanted to work at this specific venue, and I'm like, look, help me
yeah.
get myself together. What do I have to do? And she's like, well, send me everything a client touches. And if you know Sasha, she's methodical. She likes everything lined up. Like we call her chairs, Sasha Souza straight. She likes everything in order, and she's able to pick out whatever discrepancy there may be. And she was like, girl, your stuff is great. Like it's
Aw.
amazing. She's like, you need to be speaking. And I'm like, oh, that's cute, girl, but that's not why I'm
Right?
here. I'm trying to work at
Number
this
one,
venue. She's
number
like,
one fear in the world, speaking.
well, it wasn't mine. Like, I'm a former pageant
I'm
princess and everything else. But I was
yeah,
like,
yeah,
girl,
yeah.
that's not why I'm here. I'm just trying
Yeah.
to work at this venue. And she said something that snatched me by my collar. She said, you're thinking too small. I was
Ooh.
like, oh, okay. Well, all right. And she used her name to, get me a place at Cater Source where I spoke for the first time. And I was, of course, I get nervous before every time I speak, but I was so nervous. So many things had happened, but it felt so natural. Fausto tells a story all the time about how the fire alarm went off in the middle of my session and nobody moved, nobody left. And I'm like, all right, well, you're doing good, girl. They're willing to die for you. Let's make it
Yeah.
good. In case there's a survivor, let them make it out of here with some nuggets of information.
They're like, oh, somebody just set off the fire alarm. No big deal. Somebody's in there
They were
cooking
like,
too
you
hard.
have to evacuate, you have to leave, and nobody would move. And I'm like, what do I do
Oh
here?
my
And
gosh.
it just felt so good to get
Yeah.
up there and to be appreciated for not only what I knew, but for who I was. Because, like I said, I was a pageant girl. And it's like, oh, she's pretty, but is she smart? Oh,
Yeah.
she's smart, but is she funny? Does she have a personality? And as women, I feel like we have so many things that we have to be, so many layers of what we have to be,
Yeah.
and boxes that we have to check off, that it just gets exhausting. So it was wonderful to show up as me and have it be appreciated. And I'm so grateful that that's still the case to this day.
Oh my gosh, that's wonderful because that's, I'm still in the beginning journey of this and it gives me encouragement to know that we've all kind of walked through this at some point. Just,
Of course.
figuring ourselves out and then just throwing ourselves into it. And this is what
Yep.
I'm here for. That's why I love it.
That's right.
So as we're starting to round out our conversation, I want to get to like, because this is tattoos and toddlers, I want to see if we got a
Yeah.
tattoo we can talk about. Because I saw your magazine and the magazine spread and I was like, I saw a foot and I was like, well, that's her foot. And she's got something on her foot. But I mean, you're welcome to talk about any of your tattoos and their meanings, but that's what prompted me to reach out to you and be like, you know what? That's a good excuse to call Terrica right now.
Yeah, and I'm so glad you did. So the one on my foot is a trail of butterflies, and I definitely want to get it
Ooh,
touched up. But I
yes.
butterflies have been so very important to me.
Mm,
It's because I'm pretty sure you've heard the story where it's like, oh, the caterpillar thought that the world was ending when in reality it was turning into a butterfly. And there have
yeah.
been so many times in my life where I thought like, oh, this is too hard, I can't do it. And then there's beauty on the other side. So that's why I wanted to make sure I got butterflies somewhere on my body. I can't even remember what number that was. Like I said, I think I had five,
Yeah.
but my first one These.
It's one of those.
My first one took 5.5 hours. Who does that for their first tattoo? Like, and it's literally like and to be clear, I love Ink Master. I watch Ink
Yes.
Master all the
Yes.
time. So mine is like that old Americana pick out the number
Pick it
off
off the
of the
wall.
plastic
Yep.
sheets. Girl, it wasn't even on the wall. It was on the little plastic sheet things that you chose. And it took 5.5 hours. It takes up maybe about a little over a quarter of my back.
Wow.
And it's like, Jesus, it's this woman with this long flowing hair and ninja stars as earrings and this like black patent leather bodysuit and
Wow.
black leather thigh high boots. And so she is out there. So a lot of people are like, wow, okay, there's a story there. There is. So as an only child, just like
Yep.
your baby, I had to learn how to entertain myself. And, I was a huge gamer when I was younger, and I used to play a game called Eternal Champions. And my favorite character from that game was Shadow. She was a Japanese assassin. And I
Wow.
was like, you know what? If I ever get a tattoo, it's going to be her. And I'm just hanging out in Rocky Mount, North Carolina, small little town in college. And my friends are like, let's go get tattoos. And I'm like, well, I made a promise to myself that this would be my first tattoo. And I'm talking to the
Wow.
guy, and he's like, yeah, I can do it. But Jen, here's the thing. I'm also competing at this time in the Miss America organization, and you
You're
can't
gonna be
have
like,
tattoos. Girl, no, I was not. All of my friends had to learn how to cover my back. We would use Derma Blend, which, a lot of people use for pigmentation, for, skin burns and everything, to cover up my tattoos. And it took a long, long time. So yeah, it hasn't been easy, but and I still got more that I want to get. I've got some more that I want to do, and people are surprised. I'm like, yeah, I think I got 5 or 6 of them around here, because you can't see them. So
exactly. Exactly. And
okay.
that was one of those things that I just came out. I mean, like just came out like 2 years ago and did my first visible to myself tattoo.
Hmm.
Everything else is on the back side. I don't see it. I
Yeah.
forget it exists. I forget how faded some of them are. I mean, like, but I love that though, because I just wouldn't have pictured. I'm trying to picture it right now on your back. Like, what does this thing look like? But I feel you from like, I just picked it off the wall when I went and got my first one, and it was a cute little spider, and I called him Sylvester, and it was college. It was
Oh my
college because,
gosh,
I
it's
was
always
18 years
college.
old.
Always
Good old college. It
college.
was illegal in Oklahoma. I had to drive to Kansas.
I love it. I love it.
But
I
yeah,
love
yours
it.
was a full-on commitment. Holy
Yeah,
wow.
like,
Like
and she's
six
she's
and a half
cute. Like,
hours.
she's like a little bit,
Uh-huh.
she's a little bit smaller than my iPad.
Uh-huh.
And she's kneeling, she's got one leg up, and I loved Shadow so much because she could like destroy you just with her word. And I'm like, oh,
I
I
love
like her. I
how
can get with that.
you just went all in. I love that. You went all in for
All
that first
in.
tattoo, and I love that.
All in. That's right.
There's some
All
people
in.
that go like, "Oh, I made the worst mistake and just pick some, whatever." And I was like, "No, I intentionally picked mine, but it's just not. It's this big. It's
No.
Oh
No.
my
And I've had
gosh.
so many artists offer. They're like, oh, you want it touched up, or we can make it more modern. And I'm like, yeah, maybe. We'll see. Maybe. I don't know. So yeah, if we're ever at an event and I'm wearing something backless, or you see her face popping out, you know exactly who it
And
is
next
now.
time I see you, I'm gonna run up and be like,
Yeah, yeah. Let me see. Yep. She's
"All
there.
right,
She's there.
all right." Well, I hate to wrap up the conversation. I knew we would almost run out of time here, but I just want to thank you so much for coming on
Oh,
today. It
thank
was so
you.
much fun to get to know
No.
you better. And,
Thank you for asking.
yes. And so, is there anything, as we have like 2 minutes left, is there anything we want to leave anybody with today? Like what we've talked about? We've talked about parenting, we've talked about business, really fun tattoos. Is there anything we want to leave somebody with today as a hope dealer?
Yeah, you know what? As long as you did your best, you're winning. You know what I mean? It may not come out the way that you wanted, but as long as you tried your best, you're still winning. As long as the kids are alive, the business is still functioning, you're winning. You're still winning.
Oh my God. I love that because I would literally, as an older mom, I had her at 40. I would say, I've kept her alive another year. I've kept her alive
Get
another.
it? I'm doing great.
I'm
I'm
doing
doing
great. I'm
great. I'm
doing
doing great.
um
Yes.
well, we will see y'all on the next episode of Tattoos and Toddlers, and I will hit stop. Here we go. Boom.